Hello and welcome back to I Fix It For You repair videos. This video we're going to be working on the spindles on this Hustler 54-inch ZTR mower. This mower's got 350 hours on it. The spindles are noisy. You can tell that the bearings are wore out in the spindles. Still mows okay, but it's just really noisy, and the customer's complaining about the grinding noise the spindles are making. So we're going to put new bearings in these spindles all the way across the deck. It's a lot cheaper just to replace the bearings in the spindles rather than going buying a whole new spindle. I usually don't remove the spindle to do this. You can do it right here on the mower without ever removing the spindle off the mower. But for the sake of this video and showing you what I'm doing, I'm going to go ahead and take the spindle off and set it on the workbench so you can see what I'm doing. But you can do this without removing the spindle from the mower. Okay, we're going to get started here. I'm going to go ahead and lift this mower up and pull this cover off. Pull the blade off so we can see what's going on here. Always put a jack stand under the mower. We don't want this thing to fall on you. We can get this thing a little closer here. Right, we're going to go ahead and take this cover off. Alright, we're going to roll the belt off. It's spring loaded. You can just grab it and roll it off. You can hear how noisy that bearing is. That's really noisy. The bearings are just wore out in that spindle. We're going to take the blade off. This particular spindle's got a little ring here that holds this shaft in. Otherwise the shaft would just fall out. It wasn't for that little ring. You'll see it when I get it on the workbench. Let's see, I'm going to put a little WD-40 on these rusty bolts here, just so they come off a little easier. A little WD-40 on there. I'll take some still pictures of what this looks like from the top and the bottom, so you can see that in the video here for you. That way you can see what I'm seeing. Okay, here's the spindle. Got a lot of dirt on it. I'm going to kind of wash this off a little bit, and then we'll set it on the workbench and move the camera over there where you can see what I'm doing a little easier. So take you a break, get you some popcorn, some lemonade. I'll see you in a few minutes at the workbench. Just on a little side note here, whenever you pick up the front of your mower to do any work like this, shut the fuel off or pinch the line off. I've actually made me a little tool here. A pair of needle nose vice grips with a couple of pieces of rubber line on it. Just reach in there and pinch the line off. That way I don't have to worry about it. The reason I do that on some mowers, there are some mowers, when you pick up the front, you can flood the engine. The float in the carburetor will unseat, and fuel will just flow right through the engine, and it'll be flooded. Just a good habit to get into. Okay, we've made it to the workbench over here. I've got this thing cleaned up and washed up. Here's that little ring I was telling you about, but you can see it just comes off there. It's real easy to come off. You can take a screwdriver. Once you get your fingernails under it, you can just pick it right up there. Just a little snap ring here. We'll put that back on when we get through here. It'll just help hold that shaft in place. The reason I got this rag here is because my workbench has a stainless steel plate over it, which I really like, but the reflection is terrible. You may say, does he work with a towel on his workbench all day? But you can see this shaft now. I mean, it's just loose. It comes right out. We've got a top bearing and a bottom bearing. They're usually not in very tight. You can get this bearing out with like a brass drift like this, or a little piece of steel. There's a spacer in between there. You go off to one side, and the bearings, they will just almost fall out. They're not in very tight. You can take a couple of 4x4s here and set that spindle on there. It's a little easier to work on. And that spacer is loose. Just get that spacer to one side. There's one bearing right there. There's your spacer. You want to make sure that that gets back in there. That's really critical. And there's your other bearing. It's a lot better to reuse your OEM spindle. If you're not going to buy new OEM spindles, they're just a lot better than the cheaper aftermarket spindles. Okay, we've got our new bearings here. I usually use a little WD-40. They're not really that tight of a fit. You don't need a press. They just tap in. That's it right there. You just want to be sure and not strike the center part of the bearing. So we're going to drop our spacer down in there. We've got a little bit of WD-40 around that. It just makes everything work better. You can tell that the tone changes once it seats down in there. They're really easy to get in. They're not tight at all. You want to line your spacer back up there. That shaft will just drop right down through there. This little snap ring that the factory puts on there, the only thing I can figure out that it's there for is just to kind of help hold this shaft in place until you can get the pulley on top, bolted everything down, because once everything's bolted together, that snap ring doesn't really add any value at all. You can already hear that that's much quieter there. So we're ready to mount this spindle back on the mower. I made another video where I put a grease zert in this and extend the life of these bearings. I'll add a link to that video right up here in this corner, so just watch that if you're interested in seeing that. Also down below I'll put links on where I get my bearings. The place I'm getting my bearings from, their website is changing, so it'll be a little while before I add that link. But I'll add that link and description on the bearings. Keep in mind that your bearings could be different than these. You may have a different part number. The part number of the bearing is usually right there on the side of it. So from a bearing store that I do business with, they sell good quality bearings at an affordable price. They don't gouge you. So I will meet you back over at the mower deck. Okay, we've got our spindle back over here. We're going to bolt it back on there. Okay, on this particular mower we have a spacer that goes on first. Then we have the pulley that goes on second. Have another spacer. Then the bolt that holds it all together. That is very smooth right there. Nice and smooth. You can't really hear it. Actually, you want both the blade on the bottom. That's very smooth. I can barely hear it. I'll go ahead and do these other two spindles right here on the mower. You can see how easy that was up on the workbench. You don't have as much room down here, but that's just a little quicker way for me to do it. Thank you for watching. I hope this video saves you some time and money. Have a great day. Aftermarket spindles that aren't that good. Repairing your original OEM spindle is better than the aftermarket inferior spindles that you can find online for $20. But I'm going to remove the spindle and set it on the workbench so I can show you in greater detail what I'm doing.